So we'll start. I want to extend a welcome to each one of you here today. And I want to begin with the apologies. We have the Lord Mayor and Reynolds apologies and apologies from Councillor Will Coates. Confirmation of the minutes. Someone would like to move the acting Lord Mayor. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 2, consideration of supplementary items. There being none. Indications of pecuniary and conflict of interest. Is there any? No. Thank you. Transfer of agenda items. No. Number 5, planning authority items. Consideration of items with deputations. We have the representative Margaret Taylor and also the applicant. 4 of them. They're going to be via Zoom. So someone would move.
So moved.
All in favour?
Aye.
Against? No. Carried unanimously. Thank you. Number 6, committee acting as the planning authority. Again, I just remind the elected members that we are acting as planning authority under Regulation 25 of the meeting procedures. 6.1.1. There's only one application. So we have the representative, Margaret Taylor from Hobart, not High Rise. Please just come over and use the mic, and when there's about 30 seconds left, I'll let you know. Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Am I likely to be allowed now? And hello to all of those of you I know. I'm here obviously as the President of Hobart, not High Rise, and we thank you for the opportunity to address the Planning Committee on this matter. With such a major built structure, we felt it important that we represent the residents' views. The first thing I want to make very clear is Hobart Not High Rise is pro-development, as long as it maintains the scale of the existing city and provides real benefits to its citizens. Therefore, we didn't oppose the Vinnie's Argyle Street development, nor the Macquarie Street housing development. Both were planned with height above advised levels and surrounding structures, but both compensated for this with provision for increased greenery and residents' amenity provisions, as well as reflecting the future for those streets. We can agree on a number of points about this development. First of all, the opening or proposed opening of the rivulet is wonderful. Having a parklet by the rivulet, which may eventually lead to a walking track all the way to South Hobart, also sounds wonderful. The parking facilities proposed are good. The need for new office space is an obvious requirement in the city, because I'm told by people who work in such places that the old buildings are no longer fit for purpose in this regard. It offers a bit more greenery in the city, always a plus, and it's replacing a building with no particular architectural merit with a modern building that for us in another setting would be admired. However, we should not be building structures that detract from Hobart's character and history. The special area plan for Hobart's Central Business District aims to provide an urban form that represents and responds to Hobart's unique natural built characteristics. To respect the unique character of the Hobart CBD and maintain the streetscape and townscape contribution of places or precincts of historic heritage significance. This building does not comply with the acceptable solutions that would ensure its height and bulk achieve these goals through compatibility with existing buildings in the area and not being individually prominent. The tower block at 52.5 metres is well above the recommended height limit and the heights of nearby buildings. Glass frontages may provide some relief to bulk, but the building will still unreasonably dominate existing buildings of cultural heritage significance. On Liverpool Street, the pod respects the height of the old theatre, but its design conflicts with the heritage frontage of the theatre. I'm afraid we ordinary residents don't always agree with the architects who obviously are looking for some more artistic representation of things. We're a bit more bland, I suppose. So on the office tower is unreasonably dominant on the landscape and will detract from the historic heritage significance of buildings along Liverpool Street. A 6-metre setback is not sufficient for a 45-metre building, let alone one that is 52.5 metres. The development's proportion, materials and detail reflect but do not reinforce the streetscape pattern. We do not accept that the building reflects the Victorian facades along Liverpool Street. As the officer's report to you states, there are existing buildings on Liverpool Street and above the arcade that are taller than the heritage buildings. However, they are 6 to 7 stories, not 13 stories. That's quite a difference. Appropriate good design would limit the height of this building to 6 or 7 stories, and then I would admire it completely. We accept the report on view lines from within the CBD and the waterfront. However, West Hobart residents would ask you to recognise that their view lines into the city will be impacted by the tower.
Margaret, you have 30 seconds left.
Oh, sorry, I'm way too slow.
You'll have questions afterwards. Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, so you know, basically the height thing. Wait a minute. We note, and we see this as very important if you decide to approve of this, because we recognise that you're under a great deal of pressure to approve it, and we understand the reasons. But we hope that you will very carefully look at the conditional endorsements that have been added and make sure that all 28 pages of them are part of the authority to proceed with the development. I have a couple of queries. I'm assuming that in another 2016 event, the rivulet would flood this area. If you could let me know if that's true, that'd be good. And if so, would the proponent have any comeback to council? Well, that's something for you to consider, I suppose. A second question relates to the effect of the plans on Collins Street, which would make this area of Victoria Street open to two-way traffic. There seems to be no mention of possible impacts of these plans in the traffic recommendations around the development. The other thing, or the last one of those, is many of the caveats expect the proponent to cover associated costs. My group would wonder, is council able to demand a bond be deposited to ensure there is finance to cover such costs, because some of them could be considerable, and there have been numerous developments that have run out of funds in recent years in Australia. So I'll leave you with those to think about.
Thank you very much, Margaret.
Thank you for listening to us. Thank you. I know I haven't said much that's new, but I thought you might like to see a face and represent the people that I represent.
Thank you for the presentation. Greatly appreciated. Just sit there in case we have some questions. Now, any questions? And then later on, I will ask the director to answer those 3 questions that you posed. Thank you. So she'll note that. Or any questions? I have one question, Margaret. You have referred to the height as being unreasonable. Now, have you read the report from the staff? Now, so in their view, they don't think it is unreasonable.
I think that they're doing that, though, are they, to compensate for the fact that we're being given back the rivulet and that little parklet area as a public, because that is allowable within thing. I just don't sort of feel it's, and I think that they're getting enough if they get one that's sort of, 10 stories high there.
Thank you.
I drive down Liverpool Street regularly, so I get a good view of that part of Liverpool Street.
Thank you, Margaret. Greatly appreciate it. Now you can go back and take a seat. Thank you. Now we have applicants, 4 of them, Matt and Kelly, Scott and Poppy, and you have 5 minutes. And when you have about 30 seconds left, I'll let you know. So if you want to respond to any comments made or you want to make your own representation, we will hear that. Thank you so much.
appreciate the opportunity to respond. So our architect from Great Puxan has just going to talk a little bit about the height and the considerations that we've factored in through several months of dialogue back and forth with council and also the urban design panel. Because I think a lot of the concerns that have been raised have been addressed well and hold good context in terms of the CBD.
Thank you, and thank you everybody. The building height, I think, keeps being referred to as 51 metres. Generally, the height of the building is referred to the building in stories, and that the plant room is additional to that, but I take your point. It seems to me that you wouldn't have been, you still consider the height of the building, even if it was, like you said, 6 stories or anything more than that would have not been acceptable. So I don't think I have an argument for anything taller than that, except that the site is designated in the Hobart Central Plan as a site for a taller project, and it's within the Central Business District. So Matt, did you want to add anything else?
I'll just pick up a couple of Margaret's comments. And Margaret, thank you for highlighting some of the advantages and benefits of the design, because there are plenty. The height, there was a reference in the documents to the Lee Woolley report, which has obviously been factored subsequently into the Central Hobart Plan. The height limitation calls memory of about 46 metres. We're within a metre of it in context without factoring the plant room, of course, every building has plant rooms. So in that context, it's certainly not over height in terms of where the direction is for the central part of the plan. And the offset to that small encroachment is, of course, the opening up of the rivulet and the gifting of a pocket park. And so we've had a lot of those discussions around the net community benefit or the public realm benefit, which obviously is quite significant in the context of a building of this scale and equally important. We also love the fact that it brings in the pedestrian links, I think were referred to through Victoria Walk and onwards to Collins Street. So that's one factor. Also taking up your point about the adjoining heritage buildings, obviously the streetscape itself is very, very mixed. We're very mindful of the heritage streetscape, and for that reason there's been a lot of dialogue about where the podium lines sit and the fenestrations and the treatment of the facade to create a patination that's vigilant and sympathetic to that heritage line. I think that's all we need to add. I think the rest of it's quite well covered in the officers' reports and responses.
Thank you very much for your representation. Now, any questions from the elected members? Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. With the, I understand that there's no anchor tenant yet or the like. You can't give any indication as to where signage, because I think it's a beautiful looking building and the design's fantastic, but quite often you can see that done and a whole facade can be obliterated by a huge neon sign or the like. So there's no indication or advice at this point as to what the signage, and I know that would be separate application on its own merits, but it's always good to be able to look at that in the context of the building.
No, not at this stage. I can answer that pretty clearly in that the prospective tenants that we're targeting for the product, the concept of sky signage hasn't been discussed.
Thank you.
Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, 2 questions. First one's referring to Margaret's question about flooding. The flood of 2018 was pretty serious in the city. Can you assure us that your building's flood-proof or future-proofed against flooding?
I can answer that one. We've been working closely with Pit and Sharing. We've done flood studies of the area. We've created what we call berms or raised areas before it goes down again, both at the entrance to the Rivulet Walk and at the car park entry. And our building entry is halfway down Liverpool Street instead of on the corner because of that flooding issue. So we've raised the floor within there. You'll see that there's a ramp and stairs into the entry. So we've worked really hard to make sure that we're mitigating any flood issues and that we're not causing additional redirection of any floodwaters to further along the road.
Okay. And my second point is with regard to the glazing. I think it's attractive. I like the glazing across the whole building. But 2 points, and this has nothing to do with the planning scheme, but it's just an interest to see whether or not you're able to acquit this. Firstly is bird strike. Have you considered that in the building? I'd hate to think that we've got our various birds slamming into the windows, and I noticed that we looked at this a long time ago at UTAS, and UTAS was designed in a really poor way across a number of areas where birds would constantly smash into the windows. And the second one is light pollution from the building because of all that glazing. Is there a plan to turn the lights off, or to make sure that there's no light pollution aspect associated with this building?
Sure. And with regards to the first one, not an expert, but my understanding is that we work towards a glazing with a less than 20% reflectivity, and that contributes to obviously not having, one, for any glare that's reflected off the building, but also if we don't have that high reflectivity, then the birds don't see sky, and that should assist with that. Again, our facade engineer will be able to talk to that in more detail when if we're successful and develop the building. With regards to light pollution, so we are working towards a Green Star building, which is very high in sustainability and energy efficiency. Part of that will mean that there's sensor lights, and that of an evening the lights will be off, which is when you would get your light pollution.
Okay, all right.
Is that answer your question?
Yeah, yep, thank you.
No.
Any other questions? No, I have two questions. Question number one, there is stated in the report that about 30 meters, I think, is a long shadowing. With the shadow diagram, how accurate they are and what assumptions were used?
So with regards to the shadow diagram, so we have the site and the building modelled in a program called Revit. We're using coordinates for the site location to measure the sun, using the sun angles. And so in terms of accuracy, I'd say they're as accurate as that we're able to produce, which I think is fairly accurate.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you for the clarification. Any other questions? No, I've got one further question. And the question is, again, reading the report, it mentions, height is a clear standout issue, as it were, and it mentioned that's in a individual dominant building there. Now, if it is a dominant building, then it really indicates very clearly within the 100 meters that it is really not in character. Would you explain that a bit more?
So any building of height in that area is going to be prominent. We've worked really hard with the street interface to provide some scalable to the existing buildings along the street. So we've despite the planning code having a height of, with a height for the podium level, we have reduced it on the side where His Majesty's is to try and be considerate of that. We've tried to create datum lines with the facade detailing that are representative of the surrounding buildings. So the way that people are going to mainly experience the building is through the podium level and that street interface. So that's the part that we've tried to create the most, I suppose, tactility and scale and form that's similar to the breakup of the surrounding buildings. With regards to the tower, it's a different element that is set back, and it isn't necessarily, you won't experience that the same way close up. That'll be more visible from further away. So again, the podium's been, I think, the area that you need to concentrate on.
Thank you.
Add one more component to that. In the view lines that are required under the council submissions, when you look at the various view lines from differing points, including the cenotaph and the wall and other places, because the building sits within the basin, it actually doesn't pop up on the skyline. So from a distance, the buildings actually are not really seen. It's once you get close, and as you approach the building at a street level, that's when Kelly's point about the podium takes greater impact. The podium is at that level that I guess produces that scale, but certainly from a distance, on a skyline basis, it doesn't pop up from the view lines, mainly because it sits a bit lower in the basin.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, any other questions? No questions from the elected, but thank you very much for your presentation. Greatly appreciate it. Now, we have Choi here with us, and he will show us the model. Thank you, Choi.
Any location that you're interested in. Things like that.
Can I have a look at the podium in relation to His Majesty's?
Sure.
And Karen, just out of interest, if they hadn't have removed the slats on His Majesty, would we have still been aiming for the same outcome? If that facade wasn't exposed?
Through you, Chair, the removal, if it's still the same building with the same heritage protections, I guess it's a little bit more obvious that it is a heritage building now. But those, as I understand it, the design was well underway, paying the highest respect that it could to the heritage building. So I don't think the outcome would have really been any different.
If you have any questions, just feel free, elected members, to ask, and I'm sure.
Look at it from, say, somewhere up the top of Mole, the steep part of Mole Street or Bathurst Street, sort of looking from the elevated section of West Hobart down back down this way. Up the top of the hill as well, so yeah, up there. Government Tower's more prominent, isn't it? Mm.
Even from that view, Troy,
Yeah.
how high off the ground are you with the vista there?
So,
If I was standing on that corner,
so
would I be 9 foot tall or?
no, so on the ground you are at, you know, above sea level at 41 meters, but then plus 1.6, let's say.
Okay.
So 42 or 43.
So I'd be the height of a person. That would be the view line I would see as a human.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
Can we just go for a drive down to the waterfront
Yep.
and have a look back at the view lines that that stated it's not interfering with the view? Look back at Mount Wellington.
So the proposal is sort of hidden behind the building.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, the fish pond. Right, just there.
Mm-hmm.
Any more?
Any other questions? No, thank you. Thank you so much, Joy. Greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, do you have any questions to ask the acting director before she responds to those two questions left, I think? Councillor Basalt.
Thank you, Chair. Just in relation to performance criteria 6.8.6b, it indicates that we're putting a condition on the approval that they don't use brick on the lower floors. Can you point me to the specific wording of that condition? As in which condition? I know it's written into the performance criteria, but is it written into the conditions at the front of the report as well? I just couldn't find it.
Through you, Chair. So if you go to page 103 of the agenda, condition PLN S3 talks about external colours and materials, and the third paragraph specifically refers to brick cladding system and requires that an alternative material is provided through our condition endorsement process, which is essentially the detailed design phase of planning.
Yeah, thank you, Acting Director. I'd just point elected members to have a look at that section. Is there any, through you, Chair, can you provide more commentary on why that is the case? I've read what's in the document, but I feel that we were given pretty strong rationale for the choice of brick when we were first had this development put through our workshop process. So I kind of fail to understand why that's been picked up, given the strong preference of the developer with good merits.
Through you, Chair, it's a key concern of our cultural heritage officers. The fact that it wouldn't be brick for the entire way, and that part of it would be fake brick, for want of a better word. And the concern that lacks authenticity, I guess, and it's better to have a product that's authentic and not pretending to be brick, rather than something next to the heritage building that's not brick but pretending to be brick.
And one supplementary through you, Chair. If we talk about authenticity, then we could refer to tilt-up concrete as being authentic to itself. What sort of conditions are we leaving ourselves open to by having that requirement? Given the very tall nature of this building, it's likely to be steel and concrete as its structural elements.
Through Chair, I'll just remind elected members that this is the suggestions that come to you are recommendations, and you don't have to accept, even if you decide to approve, you don't have to adopt all of the conditions that are recommended. But that's the opinion of the Heritage Officer, that it would be more appropriate, frankly, to have a concrete element rather than a fake brick.
Any other questions? Councillor Passol, do you have another?
No, not for now, thank you.
Okay. No, I just have one question. Clause E1381 with regards to demolition, I think it's on page 90, 6.1.4. Now, it states there, the demolition must not result in the loss of any of the following. And then it states A, B, 1 and 2. And in point number 3, it states that opportunity is created for a replacement building that will be more complementary to the heritage values of the precinct. Is that taken into account here?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a heritage precinct, and there was initially some concern about the demolition of the building that's currently over the rivulet, in that it has some heritage value. But the precinct is very much focused around the rivulet, and so the heritage officers were excited about the opportunity of the line of the rivulet. We're not going to actually see inside the rivulet, but having that as an obvious element to the streetscape, they thought was justification essentially for allowing the demolition of the heritage building.
So it is complementary?
Through years, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No, someone would like to move the recommendation. Councillor Harvey moves the recommendation.
Thanks, Chair. I will move it. Look, one of the things that was mentioned by one of the representative was the pressure to approve this. I haven't felt any pressure. I've thought this has been quite a smooth process. And looking at the design as it's before us, I'm supportive of it. The height, I understand. It's there's concessions given there, but it's also, as has been said, it sits in the basin. So that offsets the height. And looking at the fly-throughs that Choi showed us, that didn't ring any alarm bells either. The sight lines are protected. The style of the building, I think, is attractive to the area. The support from the UDAP has been very, well, their support's been strong, I think. They've made some really interesting comments about how they do support it. The fact that we're getting a parklet associated with this, and the opening of, not the opening, but where the rivulet flows will be exposed as a element of through a walkway. It's got good bicycle parking and end of trip facilities, which I thought was good. I don't know whether that will be enough bike parking in the future as more and more people ride. So they may have to expand that. Hopefully there's room for expansion of the bike parking. It's got car parking beneath it, not an enormous amount, but for tenants. I can't think of any things that this is detrimental to the city at all. I'm fully supportive of it, so I hope it gets through tonight. I'm confident it will, because I think it does tick a lot of boxes. And I understand from the report, can't remember which page, but the report reflected on how there's not a lot of area around the city that can take a building like this. So this is a particular site that can accommodate a higher building. Any other higher buildings in that area of the city would be really problematic because of the small lots that are there with smaller buildings. So I don't see any sort of precedent or the establishment of a height rush for the area, because those other heritage buildings occupy small lots, and you would never be able to demolish them all, or enough of them to create a building of this substance. So overall, I think it's a really good outcome for Hobart.
Thank you, Chair. I'd seek to move an amendment to remove clause PLNS3 from the conditions.
What page?
I've got it's page 9 of the report. I've got a manual copy in front of me. Look, as I recall from our workshop, I think Councillor Kelly, we had some conversations about the being really excited about the treatment of the facades in the area, and it reflecting the character of that area. That there was a question mark over sandstone early on in their design piece, but when they looked at the broader area, they realised that this particular part of Liverpool Street and the city indeed were predominantly red brick, and they converted their design after much interrogation architecturally and creatively as to what they thought would work best and sit well. I really struggle with the heritage officer versus architect argument. I think that architects are eminently qualified to design around heritage requirements and provide sympathetic design work. And I think that it's a problem if we start to almost ad hoc change elements of architectural creative freedom and say, well, you can do all of that, but I really don't like this particular thing or that particular thing because I don't think that it fits within my view of how the building should work. I think that architects, I think overall in the community, this building has been well received, and there's quite a lot of people that are excited about it, references to New York and things. But if you start to play with architectural freedom, you don't get the result. We won't get the result that's in the renders if we ask them to change the facade and enforce it. That's my rationale. I'd ask elected members to consider that, and I'd also point to the blue gum development. If you want exposed authentic materials, that's the sort of result that we could end up with here.
So, Councillor Pasal, are you moving an amendment?
Yes.
So, yeah.
Sorry, what are you talking about? Page 8, page 9.
This is an
PLNS3.
Sorry, I can't hear the words. PLNS3. Okay.
And it's a condition that requires that they do not...
Correct? The cladding?
Sorry, Councillor Alderman Zucker, he's speaking.
It's a requirement that they don't use their proposed brick facade treatment, and the rationale explained in the report is that it's inauthentic because the bricks are not structural, but obviously if we're building a 12-storey building, the bricks are never going to be structural. And I struggle with that logic, and I struggle with the impediment on creative freedom for the architect as well as the outcome. I think it's one step too far.
Can I get a comment from the Director?
Through Chair, as I said, these conditions come to you as recommendations. They're provided with the support of advice from qualified experts, but if you disagree, it's a matter for the elected members.
Councillor Alderman Zucker.
Yeah, look, through you to the Director, can the proponents seek an amendment to that component if they seek to do so? Appeal it, in other words, and through you.
Through you, Chair, if we impose this condition, then yes, the applicant could appeal it.
Yeah.
That would have the disadvantage of the permit not being active while the appeal is being resolved, so that the applicant would be disadvantaged during that period.
Yeah, I understand that, but if the point I'm saying is if the applicant had some serious issues with that, the applicant could take it on board and fight it. So I'm happy to go down, I'll be voting against the amendment, I'm happy to go down the track because the applicant has the right to appeal that condition if they felt the need to do so, because I'm comfortable with it. So.
Yeah, Councillor
Well, I wanted to talk on the actual item, not the amendment. I'm not going to talk about the amendment.
Councillor Kelly, amendment.
Look, I agree with the officer report here that you've only got to drive up the new building in Harrington Street past St Mary's Cathedral, the new, I think Bethlehem House, is it? It's just been completed.
Yes.
And that's got exactly this. It's got the fake brick on it, and I got to tell you, it sticks out. And I accept it's a noble effort at trying to mimic, but it says here, this building is in part heritage area. You've got the sandstone building across the road. There's a lot of brick stuff around and that. And sorry, just mimicking something to look faux it just doesn't cut it. And there's a living proof of it, which I've seen and observed closely on this building, which has just been completed with exactly the same sort of mimicking brick. So unfortunately, I take some points that have been made, but I can't support the amendment on this occasion.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I'm trying to look back to know that when you start allowing bricks and so forth, and when the council imposes its own style and design, that we end up with horrific outcomes. Those of us might remember the Grand Chancellor, how we all, well, it wasn't us obviously, but that the council had imposed that they didn't like the design at the time. It was supposed to be a glass building down there, and now it's this really incredibly ugly building that's totally composed of bricks in different colours. And then we have other buildings throughout built in earlier eras, also in bricks and don't fit in. The reason why this particular part of the plan is here is because we are trying to make sure that every effort is made to actually fit this into the area. We don't want to start deciding these types of things. We aren't architects, designers. And I can remember too, sitting in the very first planning meeting ever when I was learning what it was to be here. And that was when we had a model of the Elizabeth Street accommodation building for UTAS, and the room decided they didn't like the colour, and so it was actually this room that decided to make it that real dark grey colour. It was this room that did that. So I'm really cautious when we start deciding what's good and not good to fit in. We actually need to leave it to people who understand heritage and leave it exactly as be. So I won't be supporting the amendment.
Anyone else? Councillor Passol.
Just to be very clear, the prescribed condition in the report does exactly what you're suggesting, Alderman Bloomfield. It takes away the creative control of the architect and imposes council conditions on the design. It does exactly that. I am seeking to have that removed to allow architectural and creative freedom as the building was first envisioned.
Councillor Elliott.
Yeah, I support the amendment. I think the rationale makes sense, and I think that the architect's ability to bring their vision here to life is carries heavier weight for me than the faux brick argument from the heritage officer. And if executed well, and I actually do have faith that that can be done here, unless you saw the cladding go up, there's a chance you might not know what it is. So I think there's a lot of smart products and smart people on the market, and I think the architects should be allowed to deliver what they have pictured.
Any other comments on the amendment before I put it to the vote? No? Okay, I'll put that amendment to the vote. All in favour?
Aye. Aye. Oh, hands.
Those against?
No.
Now, do the ayes first.
For?
Councillor Elliott, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Woberger, and Councillor Data.
Against?
On Zuko, Councillor Kitsos, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey, and the Deputy Lord Mayor.
Okay, it's lost. Thank you. So we'll go back to the recommendations. Councillor Luberger.
Thank you, Chair. For me, this particular issue, or this particular project, revolves around height. It is a difficult issue for me, including for a lot of other people, including myself. But look, while I don't support tower blocks looming over 1- and 2-storey residential areas, I really have no objections to this building, which is in the CBD and surrounded by commercial properties. The building also sits in a basin which effectively reduces its comparative height, and it is actually, it makes it actually appear lower than the nearby Commonwealth Government Tower, despite it being actually a taller building. In my view, the Commonwealth Government Tower still dominates the view lines in that area. The gift of a new public park should also be mentioned. It's a real bonus for the community, especially in this western end of the CBD, which has very few parks compared to other parts of the city. And I think finally I'd really like to commend the design, which if constructed as shown, I believe it'll be the first modern office building in Hobart that does not resemble a block of Lego, and I really welcome that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other comments? No. Councillor Passau.
Thank you. Look, I'd echo the sentiments of Councillor Lohberger. I think this is an exciting development. Councillor Harvey made some good points earlier as well. I think it will help to enliven the area and enliven the city with really terrific design. It's disappointing that we will impose conditions on the facade against the architect's desire and against the renders that we've all seen and so happily lauded on social media, that we'll get a different result. So I do hope that that result is as good as the architect's intent. And I hope that it's not just tilt-up concrete. I really do. So yeah, thanks to the architects for their great work. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate the steps that you guys took with the Urban Design Advisory Panel, but also taking the effort to come and see us on council for a workshop so that we can have the best understanding of your proposal prior to it coming to a planning meeting. So thanks to everyone involved, and look forward to see it being built.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. I congratulate the extensive involvement the applicant has had with the Urban Design Advisory Panel on multiple occasions, and the endorsements that the UDAP have given us gives me great confidence that this will be a good building. I am concerned a little bit about the height. In a perfect world, that would be reduced by some levels, and I take on board what the representative said tonight. However, it's a bit of give and take here. I applaud that the heritage people are trying to keep this authentic as far as not using faux imitation things. And whilst we can't condition this tonight, I just would hope the right thing is done. And it's little things that can destroy a building, as I mentioned earlier, big neon, garish lights, and the other concern that could ruin it is the plant and equipment with the air conditioning on the rooftop space. I hope that's done as well as it can be and doesn't destroy the image that we see here tonight without those two elements I've just mentioned. So all in all, I think this is a great addition to the city, and I look forward to seeing hopefully the work start as soon as possible, if that's to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alderman Zuko.
Before I speak, I just want a couple of questions so that way there we've all got it. What is the height, through you to the Director, what is the actual height of this building excluding the air conditioning XYZ?
Through you, Chair, it's 47.5 metres.
47.5 metres. And what's the height limitations in this area?
Through you, Chair, there is no maximum height currently in the planning scheme.
Okay. So the one thing is there's no maximum height of the area at this point in time, and nor it is, I think, at 47 metres, anything sort of dramatic in this area. And I say it in this way: you've got to look at the demographics of Hobart, and this is one of the things I like about Lee Woolley and Lee Woolley report. He looks at the city in an overall aspect, and he doesn't look at height limitations at 60 metres. His report goes that there are some areas we can go up to 75 metres because of the troughs and everything. If this building was being built at the corner up the hill, it would be a completely different kettle of fish. But where it is, where it sits, and I think the montages we saw there, it actually is not an impact on the city. And even if it had to go to 52 metres, even if it had to go to another story at say 51 metres, I would be still happy with it. I believe in all my time of being on this council and seeing proposals here, this the design itself, to me, really stands out, and I think this is an absolute. This will make this corner a very predominant corner for the city, and will be one of our iconic buildings in the long term in this city, outside of, say, our Henry Hunter and etc. buildings that we have in the city, which are very iconic. I fully support the proposal. The only reason why I didn't support the amendment is if the architects and developers have serious issues with it, there is a mechanism for them to go down the track and seek that amendment. I'm comfortable with the officers and the heritage to in their recommendations in this, and I commend the developers and the architects. I think they've done an amazing job in presenting this to Council and the City of Hobart.
Any other? Councillor Kistos.
Look, it's really nice to hear all these positive comments around the chamber tonight about this development, and I echo everything that has been said. In fact, it leaves me little room to commend the building more to the community. But for me, I really like the design. I think it's smart, I think it's future-proof, and I think it will revitalise the area. I think it will be a really welcome addition to Hobart and the modernising of our available office spaces. To me, my favourite part of this building is twofold. I really like the end-of-ride facilities that have been designed to encourage the use of active transport and the interconnectivity with our cycleways. And I think that speaks really well to the fact that it sits over the rivulet, and that the rivulet area is now going to be public open space. And I'd really like to see that open space consider all community users that may like to access it, from our inner city office workers to families to older people who might like to sit in the sunshine up that end of the CBD. So thank you for bringing such a quality application, and I fully support this. In fact, I'm excited by it.
Any other? Acting Lord Mayor.
Very much, Chair, through you. Just a few comments. I won't speak for long because everyone's pretty much said everything that I would have liked to have said, but I too just want to commend this particular application. I'm very excited about it as well. I think it makes a wonderful contribution to our city. Just 2 points that I'd like to say is, number one, the sustainability principles as well as the civic benefits, and number two, that pocket park and revealing the Hobart rivulet. So once again, like everybody else has done, I commend this particular application, and I'm really excited to see it being built. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments? Well, let me make my contribution. I just want to make 4 observations. Firstly, I, like the others, observe the commendation and the recommendation made by UDEP, and they have unanimously agreed to this. While they have done this, I do realize that there is a more holistic approach, and they don't look at each performance criteria critically, as you and I are supposed to do as planning authority. So there is that commendation, that recommendation they have made, and it is unanimous. I take that on board. Point number 2 that I observe is the height. Now, it is indeed, in my view, like a number of community members have stated, the height is pretty high. And my test is to look at it in the performance criteria. Now, there is only this one building in that location which is going to be dominant. And my question is whether this dominance is unreasonable. And when I've looked at the evidence and the arguments presented by staff, I have come to the conclusion that it is not unreasonable. And so therefore, I'm able to support the height. Point number 3, I make the observation, is the overshadowing. Again, there's about 30-meter long overshadowing, but again, when you look at the evidence given to us and the arguments, I'm quite happy with that. And the final observation I made in the report was this, that there is no environmental site assessment. Now again, the criteria is very clear, But when I read the report presented to us by staff, they have very clearly mentioned in there that the historical record is the first step. And once they've done that, once it's demolished, then they can do the other bit. So I'm quite satisfied with this particular report and the arguments presented to us. And finally, in conclusion, I would say there are some very positive features that I really appreciate, and I'm sure the city and the residents will really enjoy this particular building as we approve it tonight, hopefully. Okay, I put the recommendation. Those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation, and thank you for your participation. Greatly appreciated.
Very good.
Okay. All right, we'll move on and do 7.2 first and 7.3 because the acting director, I'm sorry, has a reason behind that. So we look at 7.2. 7.2.
7.2.
Right. So I'm advised that we look at 7.2 first. Someone would like to move the recommendation. Any questions?
I've lost it. Just give me a second. Back to it.
Any questions?
I'm just loading it up again. I lost
no problem. 7.2. Delegated decision report.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay. Any other? Acting Lord Mayor, do you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, I just told David.
Anyone else? No, I put the recommendation. All in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried unanimously. 7.3, Planning Advertised Applications Report.
So moved.
Move. Any questions?
I'm not 100% certain which report list it was, Chair, but I just wanted to ask about the former York store. I noticed it's on one of the lists. Do we have any details about that particular proposal? I think it's 50 York Street.
Which item is that?
That's a good question. Just trying to find it, Chair. No, better than that, please.
Yeah, that's included on the 7.2, which is a delegated decision. Were you hoping to get further information about that?
Yeah, just asking, just interested in what's going on there. Because it's been a...
Chair, I'm not familiar with that, and I'm not sure whether our new senior planner is.
Through you, Chair, the change of use to a store, I believe was a uniform shop.
Oh, okay.
And that's been approved.
Right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Any other queries? No, thank you. So I put that all in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And now we'll go back to 7.1, Council's representation on the Hobart Draft Local Provisions Schedule.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
All right, the recommendation is moved. Any comments?
Yes.
Okay, we've got Neil Noor, who's here for this one here. If you have any questions, and he enjoys good questions. No questions? No. Okay, Alderman Bloomfield.
There was an awful lot of change for the use between moving things like educational use and a few others there. I've got it somewhere, but I can't find it in this 1,000-page tome. And that seems to be the crux of a lot of this. I'm concerned that we really haven't had much of a discussion about that. I am concerned too that a lot of the types of, I wouldn't even call them businesses in some aspects, we're making permitted use for churches, we're making permitted use for educational facilities and childcare. All of these require a large amount of area, space, parking and resources. So I think that's probably the best word for it. They're resource heavy, yet they do not actually provide really the CBD purpose. They're not businesses per se. They're not going to necessarily contribute to our economic function as much as other things like retail. I note that there's a lot of pushback on some genuine retail where it was originally permitted and now it's moving to discretionary. So we seem to be going backwards rather a lot. I don't have much of an issue with the rest of it, although others might, but I have real problems accepting that we just allow whatever educational business wants to come into Hobart. Nothing to see here. I think this is an enormous challenge to planning, to resources. Looking recently at the parking in the parking multi-stories, we managed to access live data on that for the last 2 days, and Argyle Street's at 100% often. And the other two aren't far off your 85%, so they're already packed out. We already are a city that's really busting at the seams with what we already have. So I have a real concern about this, and I can't approve in any form this if that particular clause is allowed to stay as is. I wish to make an amendment to strike that area, but I need to find it so I can tell you precisely where it is.
That's 6.17.2.
Councillor Bilhavi.
Can I just ask, through you, Chair, to Mr Noy, a permitted use doesn't mean it's rubber stamped, does it? It still goes through a planning process that's rigorous and it has to meet certain conditions to be approved.
Yeah, so in terms of a permitted use, there's no basis under which we could refuse that use. However, there's often development associated with a given use and other requirements around car parking and the like. So those matters would still need to be complied with to maintain permitted use, permitted status as a development. And if they're not, then it becomes discretionary under those elements.
So just to allay Alderman Bloomfield's fear, changing it to a permitted use does not rubber stamp it. It still needs to adhere to the planning rules.
Yeah, certainly so far as those other elements are concerned. And,
so parking,
scale, building scale,
yep.
Those sorts of matters would still be subject to scrutiny.
Yep.
Alderman Zuko.
Sorry, look, I do have one other question. I've just found the section. It's 6.17.2 and 6.17.3. Research and development. How on earth is that suitable to be permitted use in the CBD? We're not research facilities. I get this.
If I may, there are a number of research facilities within the CBD. Menzies is a great example. If they're not to be in the CBD, then what other areas do we locate them? And there may well be other areas, but it's not uncommon to have research facilities within CBDs around Australia.
The question isn't that they're there, the question is that they're going from discretionary to permitted. So we're almost emphasising that we should have more of this. I would have thought a central business district would be an emphasis on business. We're seeing an emphasis not on business, but anything but, and that's a real concern.
If I may just comment in relation to that, and I appreciate the sentiment. However, the Central Hobart plan, which has been recently endorsed by Council, has identified an innovation precinct. And by its very nature, innovation precinct would include these types of activities, and the Central Hobart plan, as I said, which is endorsed, recognise these types of use as being appropriate in that location.
Thank you. Alderman Zuko.
Just a couple of questions. 6.13, late night venue provisions, hotel industry use. Unless I missed it, was there any consultation with the THA?
No, through you, Chair. So look, those existing provisions, that hotel industry use provisions, already exist in the scheme currently, and so they're essentially a direct translation over to the new scheme. Originally, the council rep proposed that those provisions apply to other zones such as the urban mixed use zone and local business and general business zones. However, in taking into account the advice that was originally provided in the Section 35 report and considering it as well, it's quite complicated in how at this stage you kind of apply those across those zones. You would need to have individual specific area plans for each of the zones just to incorporate this use standard. I think the issue of that kind of hotel industry assessment, it is quite an onerous requirement. And I think in the future neighbourhood plans and as we move forward to the implementation of the Central Hobart Plan, we can look at maybe refining that provision. And so I think at the moment, I agree, it's not good to proceed with kind of trying to apply it to across those other zones at this stage. And so that advice is essentially saying stick with the advice in the original Section 35 report and just keep it as it is existing in the commercial and the central business zone.
Thank you. Any other?
I asked a question on whether or not THA was consulted, but I didn't get an answer, but that's fine. Okay, electric vehicle charging facilities. It's stating here that require the appropriate infrastructure for the installation of facilities, right? So the question is, does that mean that every new building must have electric vehicle charging facilities for each car park? Is that what you're referring to or not?
Look, that was a position put, but it's what we're saying is we shouldn't pursue that through this process because the construction code already addresses that issue now. So what we're saying is, while this was a position originally put forward by council, we don't think it needs to be pursued through the LPS process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Any other questions? Councillor Lorberger.
Just through you, Chair, I just had a question for Mr. Noy. I just wanted to know, I guess, what is the reason for removing the discretion from the education zone and making it a permitted use?
Yeah, to maintain some sort of consistency with the adjacent central business zone, central commercial zone. And consistent with the intent of that zone.
Okay. And just one more, I guess, there are quite a number of existing education and care facilities in the CBD, kindergartens and childcare centres, plus various diploma places and UTAS facilities. Have they all been approved by council in order to set up in the CBD?
Yeah, there would have been some sort of planning consent.
Well, and I guess final question, have we knocked any or many of these back in the last few years?
Well, you wouldn't have been able to because some of those would have been permitted. Yeah.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Jeff.
Any other questions?
I'd like to move an amendment.
Yes, okay.
That section 6.17 to be removed.
So deleted?
Yes. 6.17
to be
that
deleted.
includes 6.17, 1, 2 and 3.
Okay. All right, everybody clear with that?
Could I just comment on 6.17.3, apply discretionary use for bulky goods sales, equipment, machinery sales, hire, service, industry and storage. Through you, Chair, to the Director, is that to stop, what are they called? Big box things and tractor dealerships opening up in the city, things that probably should be best elsewhere, not in the middle of the city occupying valuable land?
Yeah, look, that's certainly the intent, and consistent with what was agreed to as part of the Central Hobart Plan.
Yeah, because I think that's...
Future direction.
Okay, Well, I won't support the amendment.
Councillor Kitsos.
Can I ask a question through you, Chair, please, to Director Noy? I'm just after clarification on the words consideration of this as part of the recommendation that's come in the report to us. So it says that that as modified to be submitted to the Tasmanian Planning Commission for consideration as part of the hearings into the draft Hobart Local Provisions Schedule. Does that then infer that they can accept or decline these recommendations or amend them as they see fit?
That's correct. It's really a matter for the Tasmanian Planning Commission. It's just whether we are advocating as officers on your behalf.
I just had a simple question. We also talk about bulky goods. I took that to mean that should Harvey Norman want to have another shop somewhere, or JB Hi-Fi, they'd come under that, wouldn't they?
They would, and they certainly could be considered.
And Myers would be the same. So these are shops that we identify with the CBD.
Myers is different, I understand.
Myers also sells fridges and beds and all sorts of things. So this is actually saying places like Myers, JB Hi-Fi and Harvey Norman are no longer as warranted in the CBD as, say, the University of Tasmania. Do you see how this is a reversal of a CBD? This is why I'm concerned.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's important to reflect on the 3 points that we've got in front of us. One is changing the use table, which is what we're considering, to be reflective of the intent of the commercial zone, which is also consistent with the Central Hobart Precincts Plan, which we've endorsed and put a lot of work into as a city. The permitted use and discretionary use. Permitted just gives a green light and says to anyone who is a business, professional service, community meeting rooms, entertainment, educational, daycares, food services, general retail, hire, hotel industry, research and development and visitor accommodation, you're welcome. Come in here, there'll be no question mark put over you when you come here because of your use. If you want to build a 70-storey childcare, we're not going to let that happen because we've got other controls in place. But we're not going to say to you, childcare, no. That's not how that works. And the discretionary one, again, it's discretionary. It's not forbidding the use. So yes, we should be looking at agricultural stores and saying, is it appropriate, is it the best use of city land to have large agricultural stores in a CBD? I think that's a reasonable thing to come to council, and all that does is it brings it to planning, and we say, yeah, actually it is. They've put a good case forward, they've got a good development, happy days, we'll accept that agricultural store, but it gives us discretion, just like the performance criteria gives us discretion. And businesses in the city very much benefit from some of the things that are outlined in 6.17.2, such as research facilities. If you don't want research facilities to be in the CBD, then you can say goodbye to about 1,000 people that work in those facilities that shop every single day in small businesses. So it's not just about whether or not we want to support a small business, it's about how we support the small business, and allowing things like research to get a green light of approval is very straightforward. I can't support this amendment.
Councillor Lohberger.
Yes, I personally would like to see educational and occasional care retain discretion, just for an extra level of oversight from this committee or from the planners, particularly given what's going on in the city at the moment and the great debate about what's going to happen with the university. I'm not comfortable with us giving away our discretion on that particular point. I do support things like childcare centres, Menzies, TAFE being in the city. However, I just don't support us giving away that final level of oversight. But I can't support the amendment because it's just a bit too much. It's wiping out a whole lot of other things that I don't support. So I would just ask, I guess, the mover whether we could just strike out educational and occasional care from 617.2 and make that the amendment, not the whole lot.
I'm not against it. I just worry about the bulk goods sales. You know, removing so many department stores like Myers, JB Hi-Fi, and it's not that we won't welcome them, they'll still be discretionary. But the thing is that we should be encouraging them, and we're actually giving the opposite message. That's a real concern. I can't imagine that we're going to find Webster's coming back to Hobart. That's ridiculous, and that's just being used as an excuse to actually suggest that this doesn't have merit, what I'm suggesting. What I'm actually really talking about is making sure that we have the best opportunity for all of the retail that is available to us and all of the appropriate types of actual city economy stuff happening in the city. Encouraging and pushing instead research and development, education and childcare and so forth. Use resources but do not contribute anywhere near the facility that these things do. We are building for poverty yet again, and that concerns me. But for the sake of at least getting the really important element out, I would be happy to do that for you.
So can I just get that clarified? So
I'm happy to simply strike the which part was it?
Educational and occasional
educational
care from 6.17.2.
Yeah.
6.17.2.
Strike that.
So just that one, not the other two?
Just that part of that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody clear on that? Councillor Passon.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. I wasn't referring to Webster's, I was referring to Hollanders, who is an existing agricultural business in the CBD. However, I think that we're in dangerous territory. I understand the motivation of people who are opposed to the UTAS move, and I understand the contemporary nature of that debate. However, the fact that it is inherently linked to childcare is a massive problem for me. We know we have a huge paucity of childcare centres in the city that could serve the workers in the CBD, and instead people are driving half an hour, 45 minutes to get their kids to care across town, contributing to congestion, contributing to climate change emissions, when they could have childcare right near their workplace. And for me, you know, if education could be split from occasional care, which I don't think it can because of how the planning scheme is written, then I might be happy to entertain this amendment. But given that we would then be saying, you know, to apply Alderman Bloomfield's logic, we would be saying, well, we're not really sure that we want childcare centres here, would be contrary to doing our job as a council, in that we would no longer be reflecting the community's needs and desires.
Can I ask a question, Chair? Just through you to the Director. Whether or not a use is discretionary or permitted, does that encourage or specifically encourage or discourage people from applying to actually have that use for their building or their project?
I mean, I'm not sure I can speak on behalf of the motivation of proponents, but so I'm reticent to comment. If it was permitted, there would be greater surety for proponents. It's also, I might just add, for information, university-owned land at the moment in the CBD is located in the central business zone, where educational use is permitted. I don't believe they own any land within the area that this change would apply to, just for your information.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Now, anyone else wants to speak to it before I put that amendment? No? I put that amendment. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? No. Okay. Those in favour?
Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly.
Against?
Councillor Purcell, Councillor Kitsos, and councillor Dutton. So that's final. So it's
Lost. Okay. So it's lost. So we put the recommendation, which is moved by Councillor Harvey. Yeah. Now, any comments, any discussion on it before I put it? No? Okay, I'll put that recommendation made. Those in favour?
Aye.
Those against?
No.
Okay, those for, yes?
Councillor Purcell, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Harvey, Acting Lord Mayor, Councillor Dutton.
Against?
Alderman Zerko, Councillor Elliott, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly.
Motion carried. Fine, okay, carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. And now we move on to 8.1, first questions. Some removed, it be noted. Noted. Those in favour? Unanimously. Questions without notice. Any questions?
Through you to the Director of Planning, 563 Sandy Bay Road. We talked about this, how it's now progressing to Supreme Court, correct? Look, I was just wondering whether, I mean, I see this as a big expense item. It's going to cost quite a lot of money. I was just wondering why it didn't actually come back to full council, Director. My question too is, was it actually mentioned to either the Chair of Planning, the Mayor or Deputy Lord Mayor, or was the decision made solely by council staff to do it?
Through you, Chair, if you're referring to the fact that we are proceeding with the appeal,
Yes.
notwithstanding that the property owner has indicated that they have submitted to the appeal, it really doesn't change our position in the sense that the reason that we decided to appeal was to try and get further clarity on the law, and there's no difference to the costs, so there was no reason to bring it back to the elected members.
So are you saying that the decision was made by staff to carry on the decision that was made by council, and it wasn't the decision of the Chair or the Lord Mayor?
Through you, Chair, essentially nobody made a decision. The only thing that changed was that the property owner decided to withdraw from the appeal, so we were still a party to the appeal, still on track in terms of the same expenditure.
It could not have been withdrawn once we got advice from the owner that it was no longer going to be used for that purpose.
Through you, Chair, it would be a matter for elected members to move a motion essentially that happen. That would be contrary to a decision that's already been made by this body of elected members. So I understand there are different rules that apply to how that would be passed.
Any other questions?
So when did this council make that original decision that you just referred to?
Through you, Chair, that was a decision by the Planning Authority. It was late October, I think it was the 23rd or the 25th of October last year.
Sorry, just to clarify your point, so we're just following that process, that legal process.
Through you, Chair, that's correct. We were already a party when the property owner submitted to the appeal, and so from our point of view, there's no change to the appeal process.
Any other questions? No? Some move that we close this portion of the meeting. Yeah, moved. Those in favour?